The parable of the Good Samaritan, Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verses 25 to 37. The parable's text. And behold, a lawyer stood up to put him to the test, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? How do you read it? And he answered, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You have answered correctly. Do this, and you will live. But he, desiring to justify himself, said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? Jesus replied, A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he fell among robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bound up his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he set him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. And the next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper, saying, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will repay you when I come back. Which of these 3, do you think, proved to be a neighbor to the man who fell among the robbers? He said, The one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said to him, You go and do likewise. Explanation of the parable. The parable of the Good Samaritan is one of the most vivid illustrations of the Christian teaching about loving one's neighbor. Its symbolism is deep and multifaceted. The man who fell among robbers represents all of us. We all face difficulties, need help, and long for mercy. This man symbolizes human vulnerability and defenselessness in the face of evil and suffering. The priest and the Levite represent the religious elite who, despite their status, pass by without helping. They symbolize formal faith without genuine love and compassion. Their behavior demonstrates how external religiosity can conflict with true values of empathy. The Samaritan embodies mercy and compassion, regardless of national or religious prejudices. In Jesus' time, Samaritans were despised by Jews, making the hero's actions even more significant. His deeds show that kindness transcends status or affiliation. Oil and wine, symbols of healing and purification. They emphasize that help should address both physical and spiritual needs. 2 denarii represent sacrifice and a willingness to share one's resources. True help often requires effort and comes at a personal cost. The main idea of the parable is that loving one's neighbor is not merely words but concrete actions. A neighbor is anyone in need, regardless of their origin or social standing. The parable also highlights the importance of overcoming prejudices and being willing to help even those we might consider strangers. Application in life. This parable teaches us to show kindness and mercy in all circumstances. Personal examples of its application. Once, I encountered a man who had lost his wallet and didn't know how to get home. Instead of walking past, I bought him a bus ticket and gave him a little money for food. It was a small sacrifice on my part, but I saw how this gesture restored his hope. The parable came to mind, and I thought, how many others walk by without even considering to help? Another time, I noticed an elderly man who had fallen on the street. Many passers-by just looked, but no one approached. I stopped, helped him up, and escorted him home. This incident reminded me that we often miss opportunities to be kind simply because we're in a hurry. During the winter, I saw a homeless man sitting in the cold. I gave him a hot tea and an old jacket. This moment became an example for me of how small gestures can bring great relief. Modern examples. Volunteering. Many people dedicate their time to helping those in need, whether by working in shelters, assisting the homeless, or participating in environmental initiatives. These actions reflect the principles of the Good Samaritan. For example, Organizations like the Red Cross or local charitable foundations often rely on volunteers to provide aid in crisis situations. Civic responsibility. In today's world, helping strangers can take many forms, such as donating blood or participating in fundraising for children's medical treatments. The actions of those who help without expecting rewards are particularly meaningful. Mercy during crises. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many people gave their time and money to support healthcare workers, assist elderly neighbors with groceries, and deliver medications. This illustrates how people come together in difficult times to support one another. Personal initiative. The story of a teenager who delivered food to the homeless in his neighborhood every day went viral on social media. His actions demonstrate that one does not need to be an adult or wealthy to show compassion. Conclusion. The parable of the Good Samaritan remains relevant today. It reminds us of the necessity to overcome prejudices, pay attention to the needs of others, and actively help those in distress. Mercy is not just an act of kindness, but a way to express our humanity and follow God's commandments. We can ask ourselves, could we be good Samaritans in our daily lives? This requires not only effort but also a willingness to open ourselves to the problems of others. Psychological analysis. From a psychological perspective, the parable highlights several key aspects. Empathy. The Samaritan demonstrated the ability to put himself in the injured man's shoes, which is the foundation of compassion. Empathy requires awareness and a willingness to listen to both our feelings and those of others. Pro-social behavior. People often act out of selfish motives, but the Samaritan's kindness is an example of altruism, where help is provided without expecting a reward. Modern psychology emphasizes the importance of such acts in strengthening social cohesion. Barriers to mercy. The priest and Levite symbolize psychological barriers that can prevent people from helping others. Fear, prejudice, or a sense of self-importance. These barriers may arise from socio-cultural norms or personal beliefs. Motivation. The Samaritan's actions were motivated by internal conviction rather than external circumstances. This emphasizes that true mercy comes from the heart. Psychological comfort. Helping others improves emotional well-being and strengthens one's sense of self-worth. This is especially important in today's world, where many people feel isolated. The parable also reminds us of the importance of active deeds. We often feel regret or a desire to help, but only actions, like those of the Samaritan, hold true value. Let this parable inspire us not only to reflect but also to act.